All right. I think we're live. Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right. Thanks for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 519, Pandemic Chat. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. There's a doc in the description video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a link in the chat. And advance you to the panel. There is a new Zoom update out for the client, so make sure you download the update before joining the panel. Let me drop the link in the chat for you all who want to join. So I posted a link to Al Jazeera's stream video that they did earlier today on the pandemic hitting Black people in America. So if you haven't watched the video of this stream, but for all intents and purposes right now, a rough oversight of what happened before you get into the docket. What talked about the numerics behind the pandemic and who was affected by it. Black people in the South, in some states like Louisiana, make up 30% of the population, will make up 70% of the deaths. So there's a lot more really know. Structural racism has still played a significant role in all of this. We talked about this, Dr. Phoenix, myself, and the Black Brain Trust had a stream back in December, January, and February discussing the pandemic and its impact. And we said that this would happen. We said that it would happen, and here we are right now. So let me see if I can find the statistic. Well, actually, I don't need the statistics because I just read it off to you. But basically, that's what's happening. Structural racism in healthcare is real. Dr. Phoenix has talked about this. A few other in the medical community. So on the docket. Let me give a shout out to the people in the chat who showed up first. Excalibur, salute. Yvonne Duncan, Cynical Optimist, peace to you as well. Midon Excels, peace to you. As always. Enigma, peace to you. Little John, peace to you as well. We got 26 people watching us, but only have about 6 likes. Just hit the like button if you're not going to participate in the chat. All right, let me get started with this. First item on the docket is from fastcompany.com. The hot fashion accessory of 2020, mask, and more masks. This is a 9-minute read. I'm not going to go, but I just want to know, this is outrageous. Okay, this is outrageous. This is dope. I like this. Right, I'm okay with sisters walking around looking. I think that's dope. Yeah, that's dope too. Yeah, this is dope too. Um, that, capitalizing off of the pandemic in a conscious way. So, what about let me go to the next image. But this is still dope. I think this is really dope. Yeah, the consciousness in the pandemic is actually real, man. I'm really feeling this. Really feeling this. Yeah, that's dope. This is dope too. Making my time a piece to you. Yeah, this is dope. I know people have their criticism. I think that's pretty dope. Um, at least making fashion statements. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with this though. This is a little it's a little suckerade. I'm not really down with that. Not really feeling that at all. All right, let me get to the next item on the doc. Okay, let me put my volume up because people saying my audio is going in and out. All right, this is from the New York Times. Job or health, restarting the economy threatens to worsen economic inequality. The coronavirus recession has exacerbated the racial and income divide. Lifting restrictions too soon will make them worse and leave workers with a. Let me expand this out. Efforts to quickly is into two major groups. One that has the power to control its exposure to that is forced to choose financial devastation. It's a pick your poison fact of the crisis. The pandemic of the most economically vulnerable reopen their employers could offer them a financial lifeline, but at a potential cost of their health. And federal officials near the testing capacity that experts say is needed to track and limit the spread of the virus. And there is no vaccine yet. The states are already reopening, urged by the president of the United States economy. That push is likely to exacerbate monsters who are college educated, relatively affluent, and primarily white, able to continue working from home and minimizing outdoor contracting the virus. Now, people saying I'm breaking up. Let me just give me a second. Let me figure this out. I got an idea of what's causing this. I think it might be the Zoom update, but we'll go along and see how this works out. Those who are lower paid, less educated, and employed in jobs where teleworking is not an option would face a bleak choice if states lift restrictive orders and employers order them back to work, expose themselves to the pandemic, or lose their jobs. That disempowered group is heavily Black and Latino thought, though it includes lower income white workers as well. It's sad and scary, said Tina Watson of Holy Hill, South Carolina, who has seen her hours cut in half at a Wendy's where she works. Though her income has dropped from that cutback, she is worried about having to interact with customers when the state relaxes limits that have forced the restaurant to operate as drive-through only in recent weeks. I'm feeling like my life is at risk if they open up our dining, Ms. Watson said. A growing share of workers is increasingly stuck with that choice. The governors of Georgia and South Carolina have begun allowing some businesses to reopen, even though both states continue to see new infections and what the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention call widespread community spread of the virus. On Friday, Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia allowed gyms, nail and hair salons, and bowling alleys to begin operating, with restaurants and movie theaters allowed to open on Monday. Colorado, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Ohio are also allowing some businesses to start operating again. Not all businesses will decide to reopen, even if they are allowed to. Many will choose to stay closed, fearing too few customers to make it worth the cost. That was the situation in parts of Georgia on Friday, as many establishments kept their doors shut. But furloughed workers, let me make sure okay. Furloughed workers whose employers recalled them to their jobs would, in most circumstances, lose their unemployment benefits, even if their pay might not return to the levels they were earning before the crisis. That is particularly difficult for manicurists or wait staff who rely on tips from customers who might not show up. They would also lose out on both regular unemployment benefits and additional $600 a week from the federal government. Rashad Robinson, the president of the racial justice advocacy group Color of Change, said Georgia's governor has targeted a whole set of businesses where Black people both work and patronize. For those workers and customers, he said, it is an absolute death sentence. The inequality we're seeing isn't unfortunate like a car accident, Mr. Robinson said. It's unjust. It's being manufactured through a whole set of choices. Interesting. Even though they face higher risk from reopening, a small but meaningful share of financially hurt workers is clamoring to return to work. 1 in 11 Americans, according to a national polling data by digital research from civics analysts. I think this meant to say civics. Civics analytics has lost a job, hours, or income, or knows a family member who has during the pandemic but opposes mandatory lockdowns. Americans who earn $50,000 a year or less are more than twice as likely to say they or a family member have lost their jobs amid the crisis as those who earn more than $150,000, the polling found. Higher earners and whites are far more likely to say they can work from home during the pandemic than lower earners and Black and Latino Americans, according to an April poll for the New York Times by the online research firm SurveyMonkey. The University of Chicago economist Simon Mungy and Alex Weinberg released a study last month on the Americans who work in jobs that require people to be in close proximity, physical proximity, like nail salon workers, or allow little chance to work from home, like fast food or maintenance workers. They found those workers were disproportionately non-white, low income, born outside the United States, and not college graduates. It's a fast reopening, Mr. Manji said. They are going to be in close proximity and face higher health consequences. Black and Latino Americans have less ability to withstand a prolonged job loss than whites because they entered the crisis with lower incomes and less wealth. The median Black household had just under $18,000 in wealth in 2016. Okay, let me read that again. The median Black household had just under $18,000 in wealth in 2016. Federal Reserve statistics show, while the median Hispanic household had just under 21,000. The median white household had nearly 10 times more, $171,000. In 2018, the typical Hispanic household earned 3/4 of what a typical white household earned. According to the census data, the typical Black household earned 3/5 of what the typical white household earned, and their household income had yet to return to pre-financial crisis highs. The virus has only exacerbated that inequality, with minorities suffering both higher death rates and more financial harm. In New York City and across the country, Black and Latino Americans are dying at higher rates from the virus than whites. Economic polling data shows they are also losing their jobs and income to an outsized degree. In Minnesota, the share of Black workers filing for unemployment over the last month is nearly 50% higher than the share of white workers. The Civics Analytics polling over the last several weeks found that Black and Latino Americans were far more likely than whites to report that they had lost a job or income from the virus, or that it had caused them to miss a rent or mortgage payment or face eviction. Calculations by the Center for Economic and Policy Research found that Black and Latino Americans were overrepresented in many essential jobs of the pandemic, like grocery store clerks and delivery drivers. In New York City, 3/4 of the frontline workers in the pandemic were Americans of color. Nationwide, about 1 in 5 Black workers were in the healthcare industry last year, compared with 1 in 8 white workers. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows. The risk and damage from the virus are disproportionately landed on the Black and brown workers that are disproportionately in minimum wage services jobs, said Mary Kay Henry, the president of the Service Employees International Union. Researchers from JP Morgan Chase Institute warned this month in a report that the coronavirus recession would hit Black and Hispanic families harder in terms of lost income, forcing them to cut back their spending to a greater degree than whites, because Black and Hispanic families have fewer savings to fall back on. There could be immense and devastating income effects that could be involved with this evolving depression, said William A. Darity Jr., an economist at the Stanford School of Public Policy at Duke University, who is leading a scholar of economic discrimination in the United States. Inequality, he said, has been horrendous in recent years, and I can only imagine those disparities would get worse. Avik Roy, a former advisor to the Republican presidential campaigns of Rick Perry and Marco Rubio, is now the president of the center-right think tank called the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, which this month released a plan to quickly restart much of the economy. It includes reopening schools while carrying out an aggressive system of tracing the contacts of Americans who are infected with the virus and quarantining vulnerable groups and people potentially exposed to the virus. Mr. Roy said in an interview that the plan was motivated in part by research suggesting that prolonged school closures disproportionately hurt non-white and low-income children, who are less likely to have access to educational materials at home that allow them to keep up with more affluent peers. The last thing we need at a time of rising inequality is to widen that inequality for our children, Mr. Roy said. Upper income parents are the ones most able to improve educational opportunities for their children. Lower income parents are not. But many economists warn that hasty moves to restart the economy will simply increase the risk for vulnerable workers without generating significant growth. There is widespread concern that consumers will not travel and spend as freely as they had before the pandemic until therapeutic treatments or a vaccine are developed or testing has ramped up to a degree that gives people confidence that they can resume normal activities without risking infection and death. If restrictions on social distancing are lifted without adequate supports, testing, tracking, and protective gear in place, many people will choose to stay home if their circumstances will allow them to, said Heather Boshi, the president of the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, a liberal think tank focused on inequality. In other words, we will see a small business, low wage, and hourly workers who are most desperate to get back to work as the first to go back, putting themselves and their families in danger. Workers who have no choice but to report for duty say they are already confronting those choices every day. Miss Watson, the Wendy's worker, said she feared potentially bringing the virus home to her 11-year-old son. Kim Thomas, a home health aide in the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area, has begun delivering groceries for an online service to make up for the hours she lost because of the outbreak. In the grocery stores where she shops, Ms. Thomas said in a phone interview, not everyone is practicing safe distancing. They are not. She said she was concerned for her livelihood in an area that depended heavily on tourism to keep its economy running, but she also feared for her health. I'm definitely worried about catching COVID-19, Ms. Thomas said. I worry about it every day. So here you have it. This is it's an absolute war against minorities, those being Black. And he also mentions Latinos, but for all intents and purposes, those who are Black are the ones who are most at risk here because they have 3/5 or 1/5 of what the median household savings that a white person has, a white household has. Most Black people don't have at least $400 saved in their savings account, so therefore they're at high risk. You throw them out there on the front line, like this person is doing Instacart and other food grocery shopping systems, they are more likely to be impacted. Yes, that's true. But when you bring this up, a lot of certain people would say, oh, I think this is manufactured. Regardless of what you think, the impact is here. This is a war of attrition.
The bad thing about this is, what's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
What's going on, bro?
All right. Yeah, the bad thing about this is there's still a tremendous amount of ignorance out here right now about this disease, and it is tough. I know a lot of people were supposed to get $1,200 or something like that, and a lot of people think that's not going to do a lot for a lot of people, and that's true. But for some people who are really on edge, it can help out. A lot of us, I don't know if a lot of Black people filed taxes last year. I know a lot of us did, but a lot of us didn't. So there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to get anything. So folks are going to be forced, I guess, to work or take whatever they can. And there's going to be there's a lot more risk. If you haven't been exposed, you're going to get exposed. Only thing you have to do is kind of study the pandemic of 1918. You take a look at that one. Now that virus was definitely more virulent than what we've seen so far here with this COVID-19, but this is pretty dangerous as well. But that one was killing people within 24 to 48 hours. It was killing people, taking them out in a day to 2 days. Some people were waking up, not feeling good that morning, and by nighttime they were gone. So that's been a lot. That was a lot more, vicious. But one of the things we did see is, was we social distance and people cover themselves up. The disease started to slow down, but the minute people started coming back out and opening back up, had a second wave, and that second wave was brutal, and it took a lot of people out. And it had a third wave to it as well, which was less virulent because there was a bit more of herd immunity that started to go on, but a lot of people were taken out, and the numbers were actually quite horrific. And I would say just because they didn't have, you didn't have any medicine, they were treating a lot of this with aspirin. That's really all they had. They didn't really have some of the stuff that we have today. But even what we have today, and not knowing what this virus is, we have doctors treating people with vitamin C and corticosteroid therapy, using Tylenol to keep the fever down, and hoping that people can clear this virus on its own. So in so many respects, back from 1918 to where we are here, 102 years later, there hasn't been a huge difference, and we're utilizing some of the same tactics. So if we look at the epidemiology of the epidemiology of what was going on during that period, we're going to see somewhat of the same, and there's going to be a second wave. And for those who have not been exposed, who are going to come out there now and start going to work, they're going to get exposed. And since this is an RNA type virus, which means it can be a lot more mutagenic, or it can change a lot more, because and there's some scientific methods, explanations behind that. We're not going to get into that right here between the RNA and DNA virus, but let's just say that this virus is highly mutagenic, and it will change, and it might have a more virulent second strain that might be very dangerous. People who may have had it before may have some level of protection, but certainly those who have not had it are going to get a dose that's probably going to do a lot more damage. So we have to prepare for wave 2, and just study the 1918 pandemic, which was hidden behind the First World War. But it has been said that it took out maybe anywhere between 50 million to 100 million people. So that's a huge, massive number. And I think we're going to follow around the same lines as that. So I just say people just study what's going on and understand what's happening. And for those who do not have to work and get out there, I don't think it's a good idea to do it. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. D.E. Raptor.
Hey, good evening, shalom.
Hey, shalom.
Peace, people. I'm looking at the economic, how Black people face this thing economically. Why? Because we're gonna get it anyway. So it is not a matter of it's not a matter if we're gonna get it, but everybody's gonna get it pretty much. So the thing is now, how are we gonna react? And right now, Black people are not reacting the way that they're supposed to. This is an opportunity to kind of like, I would say, move up. I'm talking about socio-economically, because it allows us to make the changes that we should make. Yes, there's going to be there's still going to be a kind of a backlash, but because of this thing is so suppressive, it's suppressing even the federal government, the people who led the charge against Black people. This is suppressing their action, because if you look at it, the how would I put it now? The people in charge, like the FBI, CIA, most of those people are just barely functioning in the position that they are right now.
Right.
I mean, they are stretched to the limit. They're watching Russia, watching China. Is like they're watching their own health. They're watching their family's health. So Black people, we have an opportunity now. The people who are always agitating for action, And the people who are willing to act, they have that opportunity to move. Yes, after this thing kind of levels off a little bit, you might get a backlash. But by that time you establish, say you got a son or a daughter, and your son and daughter's at home. You got to be looking at his what does he do at home. You're at home now. You're not working. If you're a male or female, you're at home with your kids. You see what they're doing. What kind of you can look at the child and say, this is the type of behavior that you have while I'm not around. I got to straighten this out. Or, you know, you get a book for him to read and he can't read at the level that you expect of him. Then you sit down and teach him to read, help him to read. These are things that we got to do. And then the money part, if you got a little idea that you can put to work, whether it be baking cakes or something, put it to work. Sell your cakes. You know, that's the way you're going to move up socioeconomically. Because when this thing is over, people are going to need businesses. Going back to work may not be an option. So this is an opportunity to start doing something that you like and you may be able to make some money with. And that's why I'm saying, you know, this is what I'm looking at this money thing and how black people react to it in this circumstances.
All right. Next item on the docket is from Face to Face Africa. These African geniuses are saving the continent with their amazing inventions during COVID-19. Africa reported its first case of the novel COVID-19 on February 14, 2020 in Egypt. Since then, more than 25,940 confirmed cases of the deadly disease have been reported across the continent, with 1,240 deaths and 6,968 recoveries as of April 23rd, 2020. Following the devastation of COVID-19 unleashed on the West by the coronavirus outbreak, many warned and feared Africa would be extinct should the pandemic spread to the continent. The fears are because of the continent's healthcare systems are inadequate, coupled with lack of funding, insufficient trained health professionals, as well as lack of equipment. Aware of what the world makes of the continent, its citizens rose to the occasion, thinking outside of the box to lessen Africa's dependence on the West for help amid the coronavirus pandemic. This article therefore looks at the continent's geniuses, ensuring Africa is less dependent during this battle. Usman Dahatu is a level 200 mechanical engineering student at the Ahmadu Bello University in northern Nigeria. Oh, what's going on here? In partnership with other Nigerian innovators, Dahatu 20 built a local ventilator, which he has now transformed into a portable, exceptional, ultra-modern E-Vent automatic ventilator. Dahatu named the equipment Respire 19. According to estimates, about 6% of persons who have contracted coronavirus will require intensive care, and about 1 in 4 of them may need a ventilator to help them breathe. WebMD reported as the picture is changing quickly, with the infection rate surging rapidly around the globe. So this is his item right here he created. Very interesting. Daniel Ndima and Danilo Leoma, the two techpreneurs, created a trailblazing COVID-19 test kit that provides results in just 65 minutes. The invention is said to prove critical in South Africa's fight against the fatal contagion. The country has so far recorded 3,635 confirmed cases of the virus, with 65 deaths and 1,055 recoveries. Named QCPR, the testing kit, are already being hailed as a massive breakthrough in South Africa's campaign against the disease. South Africa is Africa's #1 nation in testing. The QCPR test kits help pathologists isolate and identify a virus DNA or genetic material from an infected person. The ability to obtain a rapid test results allows us to gain a clearer picture of viral infection so that we are able to introduce interventions with greater effectiveness. This will remain important even after the lockdown, as South Africa has a population of over 55 million people who will need to be monitored on an ongoing basis. Ndima, a scientist with a special interest in structural biology, told the Alan Gray Orvis Foundation. That's actually pretty good. 65 minutes is really quick.
I have a question. How are we really going to see who's sick, who isn't, without, and properly distance? Because once you know who's got it and once you know who hasn't got it, then you have a better way of kind of dealing with this. But how are we supposed to open things up and really get things moving when we don't know who has it and who does? The people who are positive walking around with this have no symptoms at all, none, and will not have any symptoms, but they certainly will be able to pass it on. How are we really supposed to get a handle on this thing without knowing who's positive and who isn't? How are we going to ensure a certain level of herd immunity and all of that? How is this supposed to work without knowing who has and who doesn't without testing? I'm just not seeing this. I'm not seeing how we can get a handle on this without that.
Well,
that's true. One of the things that I'm seeing, especially here in Florida, is like, I'd say about 60% of people not even wearing a mask. And if those people, even if 10% of those are carriers, that's bad.
Let me finish this, because this is a part of the article. Richard and Aning, the Ghanaian genius, invented a solar-powered sensitive hand washing sink to help in the country's battle against the novel coronavirus. Ghana's Standard Authority, GSA, has certified the breathtaking invention to allow for its commercial production amid the race to halt the spread of the novel coronavirus. It's a small start. I would admit that it's a huge jump for the Ghanaian industry. If other companies will realize that their job is to partner with others so that they can make a lot of good products and profit, then we can be self-sufficient. Local media, City FM, quoted the chief executive officer of the GSA, Professor Alex Dodo. Developed from a recycled barrel, the sink comes with a double tap, one for water and the other for soap. With the inbuilt sensor, the solar-powered sink allows for the flow of soapy water immediately. A hand goes beneath the tap. It then allows an alarm notifying the user of the readiness of the other tap to discharge water, which lasts for 25 seconds. Yeah, this is all those inventions are really great. They're all great in my opinion. There's no one over the other. I think they all go hand in hand. Ventilators and test kits and sanitation stations like this. This is really dope. Good for them.
The problem, what I'm seeing here is that you have people they started from ground zero. Before this thing started, they weren't into making these kind of this kind of equipment. I would say equipment, and this is like what, less than a year into it, and everybody is putting their ideas to work. here in America, everybody in Africa actually. I'm not seeing too many ideas coming out of America and Europe and South America. People creating things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. TKC in the chat says, "What are your opinions about certain doctors saying that staying indoors too much will have a negative effect on your immune system?" I haven't heard that. I mean, again, like you said, it's their opinions. So, I mean, no one had any problem keeping people in solitary confinement. So, during this pandemic, I don't think they care too much, to be quite honest with you. I go out once a day. I go on my porch once a day, whether it's to take out the trash or go hit the calisthenics bars in the morning. I go out at least once a day. So,
you know, there's a measure of truth to things like that, because sunlight, your body needs direct sunlight. I'm serious. It doesn't need direct sunlight, and being in the AC confinement is not good for your immune system. Either you have to take like vitamin D, for instance, and vitamin C. On the normal conditions, your body makes vitamin D with sunlight. And the longer you stay in the sunlight, the better it is for you.
mm-hmm.
So if you are confined to your home now, in an environment where you have the AC on constantly, your body doesn't have that warmth in it. Your immune system is not going to. It's going to depend on what you put in. A lot, you know, if you're putting in, say, Coke and Pepsi, you can ensure that your immune system is not going to function well if you're drinking water and you get sunlight.
Yeah. All right.
I think certain vitamins can help. Vitamin C, and you take your vitamin D or whatever. Get out and walk around a little bit. We'll certainly help you out. But if your immune system is compromised, that's the people who are really fermented, who are getting hit a lot more. The people who have compromised immune systems, you can boost your immune system, but if it isn't really compromised, you may not have that much of an issue. But if you've got certain immunodeficiencies and certain issues with your immune system, you're going to have some problems. Those are people who tend to have these issues before, and that's what makes them more susceptible. So I think that's what it is. I think it's just really getting a lot of the key information. Netflix actually has a film out on this right now. It's about a half hour. People have Netflix, they can go to it and take a look at it right now. Coronavirus is out there. But I think people should go online with the CDC, especially, and trying to get a better idea of what's going on, and get CDC.gov and try to get some more information, because there's a lot of stuff flying around that people are just really, really, really not fully aware of. And some people who I believe who are walking around right now, who are not getting sick per se. Some people had colds back in December and January, when they didn't think they had colds and they had some weird symptoms or whatever. So I believe a lot of people were actually affected, didn't know it, and didn't even know that they had this. So that might be giving people a little temporary, how would I say, immunity, so they're dipping around, and that's okay. Some people are gonna get a hold of this disease and they're not gonna have any symptoms, but other people are. So that's why I keep saying testing is very important before we have a vaccine. But quite frankly, I think there's still a great degree of danger out there, and opening up this country right now is dangerous business. We're going to see some stuff coming down that I don't know if we're going to be that well prepared for, because we can see our medical systems right now are not really that well prepared to deal with what we've got going on right now. So I think we're going to see something else. But I say people be very careful, get as much information as possible right now. Find as much information as you can, and go to reliable sources, CDC.gov, those types of places, as opposed to some joker down the street or some conspiracy theorist.
All right, next item on the docket is from physics.org. Mathematical curves predict evolution in COVID-19 spread. Efforts to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemics are now the top priority of governments across the globe as they make these life-saving decisions. It is particularly crucial for policymakers to accurately predict how the spread of the virus will change over time. Through research published in EPJ Plus, Ignazio Silofini at the University of Salento and Antonio Palazzi at Sponza University of Rome identify a clear mathematical trend in the evolution of daily new cases and death numbers in China, and use the same curve to predict how a similar slowdown will unfold in Italy. By aligning their strategies with predictions made by the curve, policymakers could be better equipped to draw out scientifically robust plans and timescales for their containment measures. So Fognini and Palazzi based their approach around a function commonly used in statistics to track changes in the total values and of specific quantities over time. After fine-tuning the parameters defining the shape of their curve, they found that it closely approximated the evolution of daily new cases and deaths in official data from China, where COVID-19 has now been largely contained. The researchers then used the same approach to predict the evolution of the two values in Italy by fitting the initial part of their curve to the official data available as of March 29th. This allowed them to make informed predictions of when numbers of daily new cases and deaths will peak and then begin to fall significantly. Furthermore, the duo strengthened the reliability of these predictions by incorporating their mathematics into Monte Carlo computer simulations, which they ran 150 times. So Fognini and Palazzi acknowledged that their approach cannot account for real-world factors like numbers of daily nasopharyngeal swabs, social distancing, or the fact that real case numbers are likely far higher than those reported. They are now improving their algorithm predictions by considering how the numbers of individuals tested by swabs is now far higher in Italy than at the beginning of the infection. If the necessary precautions are taken by governments and curve parameters tailored to specific nations, they hope that it could become an important part of monumental global efforts to reduce the human costs of the global pandemic. I would have thought they'd just use artificial intelligence to really just do all that. I mean, they have the data, at least somewhat. All right, let me jump to the next item on the docket. All right, this is from fastcompany.com. What will it take to massively scale up COVID-19 testing to the level we need? If there's hope of life returning to something resembling normal, we need to be performing many times more tests per day than we are doing now. This is a 9-minute read. In the US, which now has more confirmed COVID-19 cases than any other country in the world, around 150,000 people are being tested for the virus each day. But that's a fraction of the number of tests needed to be able to quickly contain any resurgence of the virus while we let people return to work and day-to-day life. By some estimates, we need to be doing 20 million to 30 million tests a day to get there. Even the more conservative estimates say we need to do at least 500,000 per day. Anyone with symptoms should be tested, along with anyone with likely exposure, such as healthcare workers or grocery store workers, and the contacts of anyone who tests positive. whether or not they have symptoms. Ideally, those contacts should be tested multiple times over the course of the incubation period if they don't want to be quarantined. A sample of the general population should also be tested at random, since COVID-19 is often asymptomatic. You want to identify enough of the people who are infected quickly enough so they don't spread the infection much further, and you can keep the disease at bay, says Ashish Jha, the director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, which has estimated that the US should run like 500,000 to 700,000 tests a day by mid-May. If we open up our economy tomorrow and went back to work as though life was the same as in the pre-COVID-19 era, what would happen is infected people would start infecting uninfected people, says Jean. We know that the average infected person infects 3, and those 3 would become 9 in 27, in 81, in 243. You get exponential growth. You would see within 6 weeks, 8 weeks, a massive spike in cases, and you'd have to shut down again. That's just basic biology, basic math. In the US, testing has been a problem from the beginning as the coronavirus started to spread. Botched test kits and shortages meant that American patients with obvious symptoms weren't getting tested, let alone anyone else. As many as half of those infected with coronavirus may have no symptoms at all, meaning that they've been spreading the virus to others without knowing it. The problem with the first round was that we were not prepared, says James Zender, a professor of pathology and medicine at the Stanford University Medical Center. We had no test to test people to see if they were infected. And there was a big delay in rolling that out, which allowed this infection to become a huge problem. Now we're playing catch up. Other countries have tested at far higher rates, including South Korea, which quickly ramped up tests in the same week that its first cases were confirmed, and which has had far fewer deaths because it was able to identify people who were sick and isolate them so that they didn't affect others. Without good testing, the US ended up with stay-at-home orders. If you don't know who's infected, you have to assume that everyone is. Even now, as tests become more available, states can't easily access the supplies that they need. In Maryland, after struggling to find test kits, the governor ended up buying 500,000 from South Korea. Other states have shortages of the swabs needed for testing. I say to policy people, you realize we've shut our entire economy down because we don't have enough swabs. How is this not just a travesty? Josh said.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Millions of Americans are losing jobs. We're losing hundreds of billions of dollars a day of economic activity because some states can't find swabs. States are trying. They are calling up everybody they can find who will be willing to sell them a swab. But this is no strategy for dealing with the pandemic. I used to know a man named Charles Schwab. The federal government should be leading the effort, he says, and coordinating an effort for manufacturers to rapidly ramp up production of swabs, along with other supplies that have experienced shortages, like the medium used to preserve samples in vials. We don't want the regular normal market to work itself out because it will literally take years, he says. What we want is rapid production. So a federal approach here would be really helpful right now. Each link in the supply chain is blaming another link for the lack of supply. Having a central authority coordinate the goals and output, like the War Production Board created for rapid production during World War II, could overcome those supply chain failures. Lab capacity will also need to increase. Some companies, like the health technology startup Color, are launching new labs that use automation to scale up the number of tests that can be completed each day. Tests should also go to the right places first. It's very important that nursing home, homeless shelters, jails, and prisons have access to testing, says Josh Sharfstein, Vice Dean for Public Health Practice and Community Engagement at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Our usual medical system doesn't really respond to those settings that well. So there needs to be concerted effort to make sure that testing is available where it's most needed. Estimates vary about the number of tests that are necessary. The Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Romer has calculated that there should be 20 million to 25 million tests per day. A roadmap to pandemic resilience released by Harvard's Safra Center for Ethics suggests that we need 5 million tests a day by early June to begin reopening society, ramping up as many as 20 million a day by late July to fully reopen. The plan explains in detail what would need to happen over the next few months. As more and more people are tested, thousands of newly hired contact tracers would find everyone who's been in contact with infected persons, so they can also be tested. Everyone who's infected would shelter at home and would be given support, so they have food and other supplies and don't lose their jobs. By May, as testing ramps up to 2 million tests a day, 40% to 55% of people could return to work. As cases decline by July, more people could return to work and some restrictions could be lifted on social distancing. By the end of July, as testing covered around 80% of the workforce, more people could return to work and the collective stay at home orders could lift. By August, the universal testing available, schools could reopen. The whole plan would cost between $50 billion to $300 billion over the next 2 years. Right now, the collective quarantine is costing 100 to 350 billion every month. The Safra plan might be the ideal scenario to save lives, but it would also be incredibly hard to increase testing that dramatically. Americans are also unlikely to be that patient. Some states are already reopening now. Jean says that he agrees that tens of millions of tests a day would be good, but also calculate that what he says is a bare minimum that could work. That larger number is completely unrealistic in the short run, given that we're doing 150,000 tests a day, and we have not been able to make that number move in 3 weeks, he says. Even while we're shut down, we can't figure out how to increase our testing. Wow. Jha and other researchers looked at the number of new cases that they expect will happen in May and calculated that 500,000 tests a day would be sufficient. If you wake up one morning and you have a fever and you have a sore throat, you should be able to pick up a phone, call somebody, and go get tested that morning, he says. And if you're positive, you get a phone call from the public health worker who does contact tracing and identify everybody you've hung out with the past 5 days. And then they call all the people and get all of those people tested. And that's how you can pick up a bunch of asymptomatic carriers. It's Public Health 101. If you go through this strategy, you have a pretty good shot of getting most people who are infected on any given day. Another type of test that looks for antibodies in the blood that suggests that someone had the virus could also be helpful. Right now, the quality of those tests is available, and someone could easily get a false positive and think they might be immune. It also isn't clear yet how immunity works with the illness. In Korea, some patients who had seemed to recover have now tested positive again. But antibody tests can help researchers better understand the virus. The main test used now looks for viral RNA to see if someone isn't currently infected. It uses a method called polymerase. chain reaction, or PCR. That's about 20 years old. It's not something that could be scaled up to 20 million tests a day. We need new technologies, Josh says. There are all sorts of cool new technologies that companies are starting to get into and trying. I think what the federal government should be doing is putting a bunch of resources into play and giving out awards and prizes for companies that can do massive breakthroughs, really kind of priming the market to incentivize a lot quicker development of technology. I do think big technological breakthroughs are coming. I want to speed it up. For now, he says, we can scale up the tests that exist and hire at least 100,000 people to handle contact tracing, perhaps with some support from apps that also try to trace the spread of the virus. The bad news is that we have 22 million people who've lost their jobs in the last month, Josh says. But it does open up a pool of people who would love to go back to work, be hired to do this. They can get trained, and it would give those people jobs. It would help us bring this disease under control, and it would be pennies on the dollar compared to the hundreds of billions of dollars that we're putting into stimulus to try to help people through this difficult time. We would actually invest in it in building a little public health workforce. If the federal government doesn't lead the overall effort to scale up testing, contact tracing, and support those who have to be isolated, states will be forced to do it themselves. Right now, widespread testing is happening only in a handful of areas, including a small town in Bolinas, California, which is testing every citizen, and in Utah and Iowa, which are actively trying to scale up testing of as many people as possible. California is also beginning to scale up its own test statewide. What I suspect will happen is some states will figure it out and make great progress and open up their economies and keep them open, and other states are going to struggle and really have a hard time, Josh says. And I think that's really unfortunate, because obviously this would be much better if we could do this all together. Man.
Well, like I said, we should take a look at what happened in 1918. Boy, this is the parallels are scary. And as I said earlier, how are we going to really know what's going on without people being tested? How are we gonna figure this out? And there's an economic component, because they're charging people for the tests and everything else like that. So our system is as they say in Brazilian Portuguese, nosso sistema é foda, and means this system is fucked. So our system is totally jammed, and it's not going to work properly in certain areas. I mean, certain states are a bit geared for this, but it's really hard to say how are we going to really get a handle on this one, who's positive and who isn't. I just don't know, man. This, the response here in our medical system is totally showing you that it's unprepared for this, and there's going to need to be some fundamental changes on that. But we're in bad shape. We're in bad shape here, and I think we just have to get ready for round two, which is going to be savage.
Yeah.
They're using that word in Brazil more often now than before.
What word? What word is that?
No sistema fora.
Sistema foda.
Bolsonaro and his crew. Anyway, but what I would like to see happen is that somebody adapt the current test that they use for diabetes, or even the one that you blow into when the cops stop you on the road.
Oh, breathalyzer.
Yep. For this testing, and I don't hear anything about that at all. I don't hear anybody saying that we are trying to do this, and that would be the most direct, logical thing to do. You use what you got to adapt it to what other people are working in other parts of the system. Even if this system might be wrong, I don't know, 10% of the time, You get it, and then if you show positive on that, you go to your doctor's office and get tested.
Yeah, X-rays can help out as well. You know, especially if you have it in your lungs, it can be seen. But people tend to have more symptoms by that time, because that's when it starts to really show itself by it expressing itself in the lungs. But you know, really we do have a test. I think that's simple enough to get out to people, and that's just not happening. Some states, like you said in this article, are doing it, but many others are not, and the economics behind it and so forth was fucking it up, and you know, it's causing a lot of problems. We're going to have to get much more wide area of testing. We got to test a lot of people. Got to test folks. Got to see who's got it and who doesn't.
Yeah,
See, the problem with this capitalist thing is that the more difficult you make the test, the more money can be made by the people who come up with the test.
Yep.
And they're not looking at for a simple. In Africa, they're looking for a simple test.
Yep.
Here, they're not.
Yeah. Well, here the profit margin is at the root of it, and then that's what's got it so bad. That's why we got to keep saying it. We got to nationalize a lot of this stuff, man. This is showing you just how ineffective it is. We don't have to go through this next round of savagery that's getting ready to come down. A lot of people are going to die unnecessarily. We can avoid this, but fortunately, if we're not going to.
Yeah, the thing is, we covered an article maybe about a week or so ago that talked about they drew blood on a certain demographic of people, a certain number of people, and although the people did not show any symptoms, the blood showed that there were symptoms in it, that they had COVID symptoms in it, or COVID tracings, or whatever you want to call it. And so I think what DE is saying is maybe onto something about breathalyzer testing, that somebody blows into a breathalyzer and it shows some form of metric. I think he may be onto something, that you could get some testing, fast testing out of it or something like that. But the ones that South Africans did is 65 minutes. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, let's get those tests, man. That's 65 minutes. That's an hour for all practical purposes. An hour. That's pretty good. So
An hour. So
yeah, that would work. That would work well. I don't think the medical not so much the medical community, but the medical corporate community on their profit game is really all about that. You know, from what I've seen now, unfortunately, as I said, the system is, it's not really about people. You know, so you know, but certainly if we could get a test 1 hour, bang out, that'd be great.
Yeah. All right, this one is from NewYorkTimes.com. COVID-19 trickles into Haiti. This monster is coming our way. The virus has been slow to hit the country, but as laid off Haitians return from hard-hit areas, doctors are preparing furiously for an outbreak they fear will strain the nation's threadbare health care system. The man stood in line, shaking with fever, one of countless others trying to cross the border and return to Haiti. A doctor screening them for coronavirus infection pulled him aside. Like thousands of Haitians, we had been laid off in the Dominican Republic, which has been hit hard by COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus. Now he and other Haitians were returning home, threatening to bring the virus with them. The coronavirus has been slow to come to Haiti, partly because protests and political violence virtually shut down tourism and drove away the foreigners who would have brought the disease to the country. See, this is a good point. And this is what I've been saying when I was on the continent. How is it possible that certain countries are getting this type of stuff if they're isolated? It doesn't make sense. How are prisoners who've been locked away for years contracting something like this? It's not making sense. A month after the first case was announced, there have been only 58 confirmed cases and 4 deaths. Prime Minister Joseph Joty last week congratulated the country and announced that factories would reopen at reduced capacity a rare bit of encouragement for a nation that has been lashed by tragedy with a deadly hurricane, a cholera outbreak, and horrific earthquake in just the past decade. But with the influx of workers returning from the Dominican Republic, where there have been 5,044 cases and 245 deaths from COVID-19, the odds are stacked against Haiti and its weak health system. Warned a presidential panel run by Dr. Jean William Bill Pape, a widely respected doctor who is racing to set up centers to treat COVID-19 patients. This monster is coming our way, said Dr. Pape, who runs Gishko, a large AIDS and TB clinic in Port-au-Prince, the capital. If a place like New York can be so overwhelmed, how is Haiti going to deal with this? Most Haitians lack access to clean water, let alone soap, and many live in tightly packed slums where self-isolation is physically impossible. Protests over government corruption shut down the country last fall, barricading roads and crippling the already fragile economy, leaving even when fewer people with enough resources to quarantine. The nation's healthcare system is so threadbare that Haitians regularly die of easily treatable ailments like diarrhea, and public hospitals often have to charge patients for basics like syringes and gloves. Interesting. The sick man pulled aside at the border crossing had to be quarantined at a vacant building since an adequate area had not been set up yet. Dr. Fitzgerald, who works with Giskio, and is the director for the Center for Global Health and the Center for Global Health at Weill Cornell Medicine, said the expected tens of thousands of people to become sick in Haiti. It's just a question of time, he said. Dr. Pape's team has been feverishly drafting a treatment protocol that is both effective and realistic for a country like Haiti, learning from the experience of the United States, where the majority of patients on ventilators have died. Dr. Pape is focusing on treating hospitalized patients with oxygen. Dr. Pape estimates that the country will need 6,000 beds dedicated to COVID-19 patients. Now, I'm not even 100, he said. But the plan, which requires trained staff, personnel, protective equipment, as well as oxygen, is costly. Dr. Pape estimates the first month alone will cost about $30 million, about half of what the Haitian government spends on healthcare a year. Dr. Pape and panel co-chairman, Dr. Adrian, who is the director of the Ministry of Public Health and Population, are sorting out details in funding. The International Monetary Fund announced $111 million in financing to help Haiti with health-related expenditures and income support to ease the impact of COVID-19. The State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development committed $13.2 million. Thank you, U.S. aid. Local businesses have donated, and some foreign nonprofit organizations are raising money that, given the recent U.S. ban on exported medical supplies and the increase in costs that followed, needs to stretch further. It's more expensive, but it was the only way we can do it, said Jeffrey Botros, a Miami-based broker who arranged for masks and gloves to be shipped to Gisco directly from China. A big challenge is convincing Haitians the epidemic poses a real threat. A month after Haiti's president announced an emergency banning gatherings of more than 10 and closing schools, taps the converted pickup trucks that run as private buses are still jammed with people. And while the upscale supermarkets that cater to Haiti's elite now offer customers hand cleaning stations and demand they wear masks, the open markets that serve the country's poor remain a cacophony of jostling humanity. Interesting word. People don't believe it's
a cacophony.
Yeah, cacophony. Yeah, I haven't heard of that before. People don't believe it because it's coming from the government, said Carl Jean Louis, a Haitian entrepreneur who interviewed workers and vendors along Port-au-Prince's crowded streets. Some claim the epidemic was a ruse for the government to make money from aid agencies. Others said staying home was impossible and they had to work to feed their families. More than half of the population lives hand to mouth, earning less than $2.41 per day, according to the World Bank. While recovering from COVID-19, a couple in Haiti's rural south became so stigmatized that Dr. Pierre, director of St. Boniface Hospital, sent a car with loudspeakers blaring, "COVID-19 is not a crime, it can strike anybody. Prevention is the best cure." To his own scared staff, Dr. Pierre explained, "This is like a war and we are the soldiers." Dr. Pape has trained more than 1,000 people to go door to door, seeking out anyone with symptoms and urging them to go to the hospital. Crews are delivering tubs of water and hand wash and hand soap in the slums where people normally buy water by the bucket. And through loudspeakers, they are asking, washing hands or leave or lave in Creole. Experts say Haiti's current low number of infections partly reflects the country's dysfunction. Protests and gang warfare drove away would-be visitors, and with them, the potential of importing the virus. Kidnappings have become so chronic that the United States issued a do not travel warning in early March. But those conditions are changing. Over recent weeks, thousands of Haitians have flooded back home each day from the Dominican Republic. Doctors have been screening at 4 official border checkpoints, but not at dozens of illegal crossings. As Dr. Pape and his team furiously prepare a countrywide response, hospitals have been left to their own devices. In Port-au-Prince, a century-old French hospital that had been caught in the crossfire of gang warfare for 2 years shut down altogether after the first suspected case hit the emergency room. The situation created a panic, said Dr. Jean-Vanice Joseph, the medical director at the hospital. Coronavirus came and worsened a situation that was already bad. Not far away, the founder of St. Luke Hospital, Father Richard Frichet, converted an old hospital building last used to treat cholera patients into a 40-bed COVID-19 ward. Instead of face shields, he outfitted staff with snorkels and welder's masks he found at a local market. He has commissioned tailors to fashion 15,000 masks out of bathrobes for use in the hospital's non-COVID areas. Interesting. Rich countries are hoarding all this stuff, said Father Frichet, who is also a doctor and built the country's only children's hospital. Until recently, he hoped the country would be spared by the unpredictable virus, which seemed to strike rich northern countries and was said to not flourish in the heat and the humidity of countries like Haiti. But watching it erupt in the Dominican Republic next door, he worries it could become comparable to the cholera epidemic that started in 2010, ripped through Haiti's slums and Burgoyne tent camps, infected more than 820,000. That came months after an earthquake that left between 220,000 and 316,000 people dead. Although millions of dollars in aid workers poured into Haiti, vowing to build back better the dreams of planned communities, public health care and free schools remain dreams 10 years later, leaving many Haitians bitter and skeptical. This time, as countries around the world fight their own battle against the virus, Haitians do not expect aid. We do not have hundreds of NGOs here and there doing things. It's not the same, said Frank Genius, president of the Association of Private Hospitals that provide about 40% of Haiti's healthcare. The group has offered 300 beds to coronavirus patients at a cost of $200 a day. Basically, we are alone, he said. For once, we need to solve this ourselves. This is going to be interesting. I mean, they're using snorkels and bathrobes. That's something to think about. I guess when your back is against the wall, this is this sort of innovation that comes out.
Well, Haiti had an AIDS epidemic before, right? So they've kind of dealt with some levels of pandemics or disease on somewhat of a large scale, because they did have an AIDS epidemic, and they were able to turn, to kind of cut that back to the fat meat. But by turning that around. So I think it's difficult as things can be for the Haitian people. I think once they get a lot more information on this, I think they might be able to adjust. But the biggest problem I would see are in kind of the slum areas where people may not be able to socially distance. So that means they'll have to wash a lot more and do kind of like India's doing, kind of literally hosing people down with kind of with like Clorox and water, which is wild, but that's what they're doing. So they'll have to come up with a way of doing that. But it would be good if we got a little bit more government support in there as well to help them. But we're gonna have a big problem here as well.
Well, keep in mind that Cuba has really played an instrumental role in Haiti from a
yes, they have
serious standpoint, and so has Venezuela. But due to U.S. embargoes on both of these countries, they've reduced most of their support, and so they kind of left Haiti at its own mercy. So I don't know, if the United States has the appetite to do anything for them, considering the fact they won't do anything for their own people here. So
yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something, man. A lot of innovation coming out of this, though. Snorkels, man, snorkels. Who would have thought about that? Snorkels.
Are snorkels effective? Are they?
That's the only thing they can use. They don't have masks. They don't have masks. Let me look up a snorkel, man, because I got to understand the mechanics behind a snorkel. Let me look up a snorkel real quick. I find this to be very interesting. Actually, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's not a bad idea. If you're looking at something like this, yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Snorkels. Does it have a filtering mechanism? I remember, snorkeling and stuff, in the Bahamas and all that, and it was just to kind of keep water from coming out, so you could kind of stay a little bit below the water, but your snorkel had to stay atop, and you could kind of breathe through it. But I don't remember there being any kind of filter that could filter out, anything. I don't know.
That's what the bathrobe is for. That's what the bathrobe is for. So if they take a piece of fabric and they pipe it in there, that becomes the filter.
And will that be small enough to keep, this micron size of a virus from getting in there?
It's better than not having
passing through.
It's better than not having
because this thing has this eyes to it. Because people are putting these bandanas over their faces and stuff, and this virus is so small. It's like literally, driving a Volkswagen Beetle through the Holland Tunnel. It's not going to stop it from moving there. So.
No, if they're using one of these sort of snorkels, one of these modern snorkels, and I don't doubt that they have a lot of these just laying around because of the tourists. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense because it protects your eyes, it protects your whole face.
Yeah, definitely protect your eyes. You know, because you can get this infection through your eyes as well. You can definitely get it through your eyes. But yeah, that definitely
it's
makes
a whole face mask, the one I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty genius, man. That is really, really genius. Especially if they're just using a piece of fabric to filter out. That's actually pretty good because you can throw away the fabric or you can wash it. This is interesting. Haitians, man. There you go, Haitians. You can go underwater with it. Why wouldn't it block out, any of the other contaminant diseases? So, very interesting.
Interesting.
But that's what happens when your back is against the wall, man. You come up with some kind of some kind of innovation for yourself.
You have to get innovative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's move on to the next article. Very interesting. Have to think about that. I don't know, on the streets of in the United States, if they'd be okay with brothers walking around with snorkels on their faces, man. I mean, it's better than guys running around with bandanas on their face, looking like Yosemite Sam, man. Bow legs and all, back off. Two pistols on their hip, man. Looking crazy. Thick beard, crazy. Crazy out there.
Where's Dr. Phoenix, man? We could use him right now.
He's I think he might be in class or something like that.
He may be.
Yeah, I know he's studying from online. This is from fastcompany.com. The most polluted parts of the U.S. are more at risk for coronavirus deaths. So far, someone who has lived in a country with only a microgram more air pollution per cubic meter is 15% more likely to die than someone in a country with cleaner air. If you spend a long time living in an area with high rates of air pollution and you're infected with the new coronavirus, you may be at greater risk of dying. There could be a link between long-term exposure to high levels of PM 2.5 pollution, the tiny particles of soot that come from sources like car engines and coal gas power plants, and higher death rates from COVID-19. A new study from researchers at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, which looked at pollution data from more than 3,000 countries in the U.S., 3,000 counties in the U.S., and COVID-19 death counts through April 4th, found that even relatively small differences in pollution made a difference. Someone who spent decades in the county with only a microgram more air pollution per cubic meter is 15% more likely to die than someone in a county with cleaner air. It suggests that health officials in the most polluted countries should be scrambling to get even more resources to prepare. Places with historically high air pollution levels should be prepared for more severe COVID-19 outcomes if an outbreak occurs there, says Rachel Natheri, an assistant professor in the biostatistics department at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and a lead author of the study, which is now going through peer review for publication in the New England Journal of Medicine. The study has some limitations, although it controls for factors like countywide smoking rates. It didn't look at the health issues of each individual patient who died. Many of the conditions that have already been linked to severe cases of COVID-19, however, like chronic lung disease and asthma, are already also linked to air pollution, so it makes sense that there's a connection. The researchers say they will incorporate more data as it's available, and they are confident in their findings now. The study also doesn't look at differences at a neighborhood travel a neighborhood level with counties, like a place like Los Angeles County, for example, there are big differences in health between neighborhoods, and people who are in poorer neighborhoods often have other factors affecting their health, from nutrition issues of lack of access to regular health care. Folks who live in those neighborhoods who are poor and of color usually go to safety net hospitals, and resources need to be directed to those safety net hospitals, says John Baums, a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and a spokesperson for the American Lung Association. They should have enough personal protective equipment, enough ventilators, enough ICU beds to deal with COVID-19 patients. You could make that case even without air pollution, but air pollution adds to it. Poorer neighborhoods are more likely to be exposed to pollution from highways, power plants, and other sources. The study also helps make the case for policy to reduce pollution to help fight future diseases. In Manhattan, for example, if PM 2.5 levels had dropped by 1 unit over the past 2 decades, it's likely that nearly 250 lives would have been saved from COVID-19 complications there so far. That's happened at the same time that the Trump administration just rolled back protections to make cars cleaner, a policy that was known to be saving lives. Good luck in November. That's totally bad to start with, but to do it during a pandemic is cynical to the highest degree, in my view, says Baums. He notes that California is now pursuing a new policy to reduce pollution in disadvantaged communities. We actually know how to do this, he says. There hasn't been a will at the federal level, especially under the Trump administration, but California is moving ahead with this program. And so hopefully we can lead the way when there's a public health interested federal administration, and they try to address the inequities in air pollution exposure. The most populated areas in the country include Los Angeles, Long Beach region, and cities in California's Central Valley. To see how your city compares, use this tool from the American Lung Association. So let's try that. Let's see New York. New York is rated as number 12. So it's ranked 12 for high ozone days out of 229 metropolitan areas, ranked 84 for 24-hour particle pollution out of 216 metropolitan areas, ranked 36 for annual particle pollution out of 204 metropolitan areas. Interesting. Let's go to Massachusetts, see how that is. The ozone grade in Boston is an F compared to a C in New York. Interesting. Both get an A in particle pollution.
But you guys have an F and we have a C. How is that?
I guess we're pretty effed up out here. Particle pollution annual, we both get a pass, 8.8 to 6.9. Total population, 8 million to, I guess in that area is just 1 million. I don't know why they measure it that way. Asthma, pediatric asthma, 2,000 to 3,000 in New York. Adult asthma, 709,000 to 96,000 in New York. Interesting. Lung cancer, significantly lower. 677 in New York to 4,000 in Boston. In Massachusetts. Interesting. the amount of non-white poverty estimate, New York is significantly lower compared to Massachusetts. It's very interesting. But we knew that we talked about this many times before that the areas with the most pollution are going to be the hardest hit as well. We talked about that before. Um, I'll skip that article because it wants me to log in. I'm not going to log into that. The link is in the chat. Yeah, the link is in the chat for those who are trying to get on. This is from theatlantic.com. The real reason to wear a mask. Much of the confusion around masks stems from the conflation of two very different uses. If you feel confused about whether people should wear masks and why and what kind, you're not alone. COVID-19 is a novel disease and we are learning new things about it every day. However, much of the confusion around masks stems from the conflation of two very different functions of mask. Masks can be worn to protect the wearer from getting infected, or masks can be worn to protect others from being infected by the wearer. Protecting the wearer is difficult. It requires medical grade respirator mask, a proper fit, and careful putting on and taking off. But masks can also be worn to prevent transmission to others, and this is their most important use for society. If we lower the likelihood of one person's infecting another, the impact is exponential. So even a small reduction in those odds results in a huge decrease in deaths. Luckily, blocking transmission outward at the source is much easier. It can be accomplished with something as simple as a cloth mask. A key transmission route of COVID-19 is via droplets that fly out of the mouth, fly out of our mouths. That includes when we speak, not just when we cough or sneeze. A portion of these droplets quickly evaporate, becoming tiny particles whose inhalation by those nearby is hard to prevent. This is especially relevant for doctors and nurses who work with sick people all day. Medical workers are also at risk from procedures such as intubulation, which generate very tiny particles that can float around possibly for hours. That's why their gear is called personal protective equipment, or PPE, and has stringent requirements for fit in order to stop ingress. The term for the transmission of these outside particles to the wearer. Until now, most scientific research and discussions about masks have been directed at protecting medical workers from ingress. But the opposite concern also exists. Egress, or transmission of particles from the wearer to the outside world. Historically, much less research has been conducted on egress, but controlling it, also known as source control, is crucial to stopping the person-to-person spread of the disease. Obviously, society-wide source control becomes very important during a pandemic. Unfortunately, many articles in the lay press and even some in the scientific press don't properly distinguish between ingress and egress, thereby adding to the confusion. The good news is that preventing transmission to others through egress is relatively easy. It's like stopping gushing water from a hose at the source by turning off the faucet, compared with the difficulty of trying to catch all the droplets of water after we've pointed the hose up and they've flown everywhere. research shows that even a cotton mask dramatically reduces the number of virus particles emitted from our mouths by as much as 99%. This reduction provides two huge benefits. Fewer virus particles mean that the people have a better chance of avoiding infection. And if they are infected, the lower viral exposure load may give them a better chance of contracting only a mild illness. COVID-19 has been hard to control, partly because people can infect others before they themselves display any symptoms. And even if they never develop any illness. 3 recent studies show that nearly half of patients are infected by people who aren't coughing or sneezing yet. Many people have no awareness of the risk they pose to others because they don't feel sick themselves, and many may never become overtly ill. This is ill. Think of the coronavirus pandemic as a fire ravaging our cities and towns that is spread by infected people breathing out invisible embers every time they speak, cough, or sneeze. Sneezing is the most dangerous. It spreads embers farthest, coughing second, and speaking least. Though it still can spread the embers, these invisible sparks cause others to catch fire and in turn breathe out embers until we truly catch fire and get sick. That's when we call it the firefighters, our medical workers, the people who run into those raging blazes to put them out need special heat resistant suits and gloves, helmets, and oxygen tanks so they can keep breathing in the fire. All that PPE with proper fit too. If we could just keep our embers from being sent out every time we spoke or cough, many fewer people would catch fire. Masks help us do that. And because we don't know for sure who's sick, the only solution is for everyone to wear masks. This eventually benefits the wearer because fewer fires means we're all less likely to be burned. My mask protects you, your mask protects me. Plus, our firefighters would no longer be overwhelmed and we could more easily go back to work in the rest of our public lives. To better understand what level of mask wearing we need in the population to get this pandemic under control, we assembled a transdisciplinary team of 19 experts and looked at a range of mathematical models and other research to learn what would happen if most people wore a mask in public. We wrote and submitted an academic paper as well as a layperson summary. Every infectious disease has a reproduction rate called R. When it's 1.0, that means the average infected person infects one other person. The 1918 pandemic flu had an R of 1.8. And so one infected person is infected on average almost 2 others. COVID-19's rate in the absence of measures such as social distancing and masks is at least 2.4. A disease dies out if R falls under 1.0. The lower the number, the faster it dies out. The effectiveness of mask wearing depends on 3 things: the basic reproduction number of R naught of the virus in the community, mask efficiency at blocking transmission, and the percentage of people wearing masks. The blue area of the graph below indicates an R naught below 1.0. The magic number needed to make the disease die out. Models show that if 80% of the people wear masks that are 60% effective, easily achievable with cloth, we can get to an effective R0 of less than 1. That's enough to halt the spread of the disease. Many countries already have more than 80% of the population wearing masks in public, including Hong Kong, where most stores deny entry to unmasked customers. And the more than 30 countries that legally require masks in public spaces, such as Israel, Singapore, and Czech Republic, mask use in combination with physical distancing is even more powerful. So this is a This is a snapshot of their metric. While cloth masks are sufficient for protecting others, people who are immunocompromised or those who have a few left over from fire season or hobbies may be considering wearing N95s to better protect themselves. One note of caution: many non-medical N95s have exhalation valves. Sorry, that let out unfiltered air and thus won't stop the wearer from infecting others. So they shouldn't be worn around other people unless the valve is covered over with tape or cloth. The community use of masks for source control is a public good, something we all contribute to that eventually benefits everyone. But only if, but only if almost everyone contributes, which can be a challenge to persuade people to do. It's like emissions filters in our car exhausts and chimneys. They need to be installed in all cars, factories, and houses to guarantee clean air for everyone. Usually laws, regulations, mandates, or strong cultural norms ensure maximal participation. And once that happens, the result can be amazing. For example, in Hong Kong, only 4 confirmed deaths due to COVID-19 have been recorded since the beginning of the pandemic, despite high density mass transportation in proximity to Wuhan. Hong Kong's health authorities credit their citizens near universal mask wearing as a key factor. Similar, Taiwan ramped up mask production early on and distributed masks to the population, mandating their use in public transit and recommending their use in other public places, a recommendation that has been widely complied with. The country continues to function fully, and their schools have been open since the end of February. While their death total remains very low at only 6. In the Czech Republic, masks were not used during the initial outbreak, but after a grassroots campaign led to a government mandate on March 18th, masks in public became ubiquitous. The results took a while to be reflected in the official statistics. The first 5 days of April still saw an average of 257 new cases and 9 deaths per day. But the most recent 5 days of data show an average of 120 new cases and 5 deaths per day. Of course, we can't know for sure to what degree these success stories are because of masks. But we do know that in every region that has adopted widespread mask wearing, case and death rates have been reduced within a few weeks. So I don't know. We read several articles about mask development before. The thing is, different masks have different sort of time limits on it, at least from what we've read on here the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks now. Depending on how this mask is applied and what kind of mask it is, we don't know. I'm seeing a lot of conflicting evidence being submitted through these articles where they're saying some of these masks are only good for about 20 or 30 minutes. And then you have others saying that they're good for 72 hours. And they're saying, they have to be washed after every use. Most people I see are not washing their masks or cleaning them. They're just kind of throwing them back on. I don't know. There needs to be some kind of established framework of which kind of masks and how they should be applied and how they should be used and so on and so forth. Most people don't know. You just don't know. So
if everybody wore masks, say 95% of the population wore masks, then even if you have it, it will still keep you from redistributing the virus to other people. And that's what you want. You want somebody who have it not to give it to somebody else. You know,
Right.
you go into bathroom, you wash your hands. When you come out, you don't. It's the same thing as wearing a mask. If you wear a mask and you sneeze, then the mask will keep a certain percentage of that you would call inside.
Yeah.
So, but if you got people walking around, if the thing is airborne, they know it's airborne. So you're gonna give it to somebody whether you're in close confinement.
Yeah. I mean, most people, the poor people that I see, don't have masks. They just have bandanas on their face, Yosemite Sam, if you will. So, you know, the you can see the income inequality shows that people who can afford quality masks actually use quality 3M masks, right? These are all branded masks that you know are better at filtering out bacteria and other microbes than, let's say, somebody putting a bandana on their face. You can see it. I mean,
Yeah, but you can also make a mask, Mike. I mean, you can make a good mask.
yeah,
Seriously, you can make a good mask.
you can make a mask, but I'm saying most of the poor people that I see are just basically don't have anything other than improvised items. Whereas the people who are where the wealth is calcified, you can see that they're using proper surgical equipment, right? So
Yeah,
that
I understand what you're saying, but um, knowledge is if you take the time to gain some knowledge, if you know that a mask will save your life, you go online and look for what kind of mask you know how this mask is made, and you figure out, well, you know what, I can make something close to that. I
Mhm.
can design something close to that. I see a woman in Barbados took a bra. I saw a video of a woman in Barbados, this old lady, older lady. Looks like she's in her 60s, late 60s, 70s. She took a bra and made a mask. And a bra is actually, if you read the history of the mask, you see that it developed from the bra, you know. And if you use cotton threads of a certain density inside there, you can save yourself a lot of heartache.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying that they weren't wearing anything. I'm saying they're using improvised items in comparison to the white population who are using, or the white population that are using basically, you know, very expensive items. N95 mask is pretty expensive. All right, this is from fastcompany.com. What is a mask valve and why are cities banning them? Let me read this real quick. In some states and major cities, it's now mandatory to wear a mask in public to prevent the spread of COVID-19. That mask could be anything from a handkerchief to a designer cotton mask to a full-blown N95 respirator. So long as you have something between your mouth and nose and the world around you. But in California's Bay Area, there's a new stipulation. You can wear any style mask you want, so long as it doesn't have a valve in it. What? Why? Because a mask with a valve may protect you from pathogens in the air, but it doesn't protect you from people around you who from protect the people around you from your own breath. Some masks and respirators have a little plastic piece embedded in the fabric. It's a one-way valve. That means it closes when you breathe in. So pathogens can't get in through it. But when you breathe out, this valve opens and creating a doorway for your exhalation to leave the mask. When you wear a mask with a valve, a significant portion of your exhalations are entirely unfiltered. A normal cotton mask is far from perfect at capturing virus particles that you might inhale or exhale. But when you add the value, you aren't even filtering your breath with cotton. Your mouth is essentially an open exhaust. Surgical masks have been around for over 100 years. and they weren't designed with valves. The N95 respirator is a relatively new invention introduced in the 1970s, and it was brought to market largely in response to a need in industrial America rather than medicine. So an N95 mask comes in two flavors, and with and without valves. Early respirators were designed to be used in factories and coal mines. They filtered particulate matter, aka dust, from the air that would be harmful to breathe in. But wearing a respirator can be a miserable experience. It traps heat and vapor from your mouth. That's why these industrial respirators had valves, so that they could keep, so that they kept the wearer cooler and more comfortable while working a long shift. Nikki McCullough, an occupational health and safety leader at 3M, explained to me last month, if people were to breathe out flu germs in a coal mine, the coal would just be fine. So we covered this already in the last article as to why you would use one mask over the other. Let me just get to the last piece here. Everyone should enjoy this one at the very least. It's from fastcompany.com. How COVID-19 killed hookup culture and saved romance. Interesting. How COVID-19 killed hookup culture and saved romance. This is too long of a read. I'm only going to read the first paragraph of it. Wine tasting, discussing books, going to concerts. These all sound like fun activities for a date night in a pre-pandemic world before we all started self-distancing, wearing masks and sheltering at home. But it turns out that these playful sparks of early romance are still taking place even now on computer screens. As we continue to adjust to self-quarantining, many of us are adjusting our routines in drastic ways and finding activities that fit the circumstances. Dating, by its nature, wouldn't seem to be one of them. But with the world enduring a new lonely normal, single people are having to adapt, and there are few other options than video dating. As interest in video dating increases, many of the world's biggest dating brands have reprioritized their roadmaps to bring this format to the forefront and have rolled out new in-app video calling features, offering virtual happy hours, hotlines to dating experts to navigate the new situation in ways to date people around the globe. Though it upends romantic traditions that have existed from millennia, some experts think these new features are all positive, helping people make more meaningful connections, even if they come with a few learning curves and hurdles will influence the future of dating for good. The major dating apps are reporting surges in messaging. On Tinder, daily conversations between users have risen by 20%. OkCupid, also owned by Match Group, has seen a 30% increase in messages sent on the app globally since March 11th, around the time that many people began staying home. But since text-based chats run dry after a while, and apps wanted to ensure users were following social distancing guidelines and not sneaking out for covert dates, they had to get creative and work to roll out a brand new virtual features as soon as possible. For Match.com, the original Match Group app, those included a hotline to its dating experts so that people could ask questions about dating during this unprecedented time. The answers to which are now packaged in a web resource, and it included in setting up virtual happy hours where 20 to 30 people can join pairs of the same group same age group and city to mingle in a group video led by a moderator. Interesting. But it's the most important.
FaceTime has gotten a. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's most important new
Sorry,
feature. Go ahead.
No, I said I'm sorry. I said I apologize. Go ahead. Continue. I'm sorry.
But its most important new feature, launched April 15th after 4 weeks of development, is a new in-app video chat service. We readjusted and reprioritized our roadmap. CEO Hassim Hassani, it tells Fast Company, video chat wasn't a priority before the pandemic when only 6% of users expressed interest in the feature. Due to the lack of other options, that interest has spiked to 69%. What an interesting number, 69. What's the alternative if you don't have video dating? No dating, says Catalina Toma, an associate professor at the University of Wisconsin who specializes in the psychology of communication and whose research has focused on online dating. Video technologies are often frowned upon when it comes to relationships, she says, and they are not the same as face-to-face meetups. But she adds, we are in a destitute situation now, and we have to use them. Hinge, another app under the Match Group network, has seen roughly 30% increase in messaging and has pivoted to video in a feature called Date From Home. Who does that? We're just really trying to encourage and normalize and show people that it's okay to do video dating. CEO Justin McLeod tells Fast Company, people have trepidation when it comes to dating virtually. Making first impressions behind the scene is hard, and it has its own challenges, such as lightning factors. But McLeod says rather than date, people can consider a video call more of a vibe check to see if people are worth dating in the future. I'm glad I don't use this shit. Hinge pivot to video is not yet an in-app function. The feature allows pairs to signal that they be open to video chatting to eradicate the awkwardness of asking. And from there, they can go to Zoom or FaceTime to chat. That fits snugly into Hinge's brand identity, which is built around designed to be deleted, encouraging people to meet on the app and then get off as soon as it's possible. Other apps have leaned into full-on video dates. OkCupid is known as a playful brand that doesn't shy away from asking questions to optimize its matching algorithm. Even in a pre-COVID world, it asks users personal questions such as their preferred presidential candidates and their attitudes towards climate change, guns, and interracial marriages, and fun ones such as how many times they brush their teeth, if they are into shower sex, and if they clap when they plane lands. When social distancing commenced, OkCupid started asking its users how they plan to date during the crisis and about their ideal virtual dates. I can't do this anymore, man. This is terrible.
Well, listen, there's certain realities, just like, Mike, I talked to you a little bit about my little friend here in the States, and I have another one, my ex-fiance down in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been talking to her, and we've been phone timing a little bit, and she's been blowing it up on the phone for me. So I kind of like that. The other one as well. So these are fun things on occasion. It just keeps you going for a minute. Now I'm not messing with any of these dating apps, so I don't find these. I'm not plenty of fish and OkCupid and all that. Not that I'm saying anything against it. If people want to go ahead and do that, go ahead and enjoy. But I can see how this video stuff is a little more is getting a little more interesting. Just say if you can't see him, in the flesh, then you may as well just kind of see the flesh, if you know what I'm saying. It is what it is, man. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's not that serious for me, man. I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
it's not that serious.
I've always been a loner anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me. Yeah, but good luck to those who choose to pay for these apps, man. I wouldn't pay for this shit for a day in my life. Man.
Nah, I ain't paying for no apps. Nah, I got my friends. I ain't got no apps. Apps. Though I'm not against it. Folks want to do it. Go ahead. Please. I'm not speaking against it. Y'all don't want to jump on the maps. Go ahead. On the Tinder grind or whatever else. Go ahead, man. Go do your thing.
Yeah, man. I don't know, man. I've used them in the past when I was younger, and they've been disasters, man. Back then, you didn't have smartphones like that, like you do today, man. This is like pre-Android, but you did have some very nefarious characters on there, man. Catfishing and all that stuff was going on back then. So my taste, in my opinion on it, is based on my experience with it. I personally wouldn't use it.
The catfish game is ill. It's ill.
It's ill.
Yeah, you just may as well get out, your barbecue sauce, a little hot sauce there, and get your grill on out, because you're gonna be grilling up some catfish for sure, because they out there. The catfishing game is crazy. But anybody who I'm talking to on the phone right now is people I know. Like I said, my ex-fiance in Brazil, we hadn't really been live in a while, so I've been calling her, and they've been calling in, and now I got old girl bowing it up again. I said, let me see that booed up. And wow, I'm gonna have to take a trip down there shortly when all this clears out. But it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It does keep the blood flowing a little bit. I can see why people are doing the video thing, and on the apps, it seems like that's how like a lot of the millennials and a lot of young, it looks like everybody's kind of doing that, even older folks. But this is kind of how a lot of people are meeting right now. So it's just kind of how that game is being played right now. A lot of it's online. A lot of it's online. Well,
Yeah. Well, somebody who's a tech person like myself, man, I just don't see the value in it. Dr. Feeney says there's serial data on there. Yeah, there's all types of weirdos, man. I just don't rock with it, man. I can't be around that type of stuff, man. I just like to keep it pushing. I don't need, I don't need any weirdos following me around, man. My rule of thumb for a lot of black men, if she ain't starved with you, she can't eat with you, man. It is what it is. You ain't starved with me, you can't eat with me. I don't eat with people who couldn't starve. So they can keep it. And I'll keep my money. God damn.
I mean, a lot of people have met, their significant others and others online. A lot of them have done it. So definitely see that is a new way of going. I myself have not been big on that. Though I am not gonna lie, I did use Latin Euro when I was going down to South America. I did use Latin Euro, and I met a couple of nice ladies on there. Though my fiance, I didn't meet her on my ex-fiance. I didn't meet her online. I actually met her. I was renting an apartment. And I met her there, and she was actually working part-time in real estate sales, and I met her that way. But I didn't meet. But I did. I did date some. Off that website a few years ago, and then I started seeing how some of these chicks were playing it. Some of these girls were pure hoes, but they would get on the Latin Euro site and put on a nice face and nice dress and all that, and act like they were good girls, but they were straight garrulous hoes. When you find out what their real background was, oh man, these girls. They were shady. I mean, they were garota. But they were casting the shadow during. They were casting the shade during midday. These are some shady chicks.
Yeah.
But they were up there looking straight. They were looking real straight when you first saw them. But these were straight up. Oh, I was like, oh shit, what? So I kind of saw what that was about. But you know, man, funny. It was just man.
Alone you ain't shit.
Yeah.
Oh, you had it was still you had the supreme hoes, superlative hoes, and they were up there playing it like they were good girls. It was crazy.
Cuatro
But
por
anyway,
cuatro.
cuatro por cuatro, centauros, centauros,
Sentado.
centauros, irmão, centauros, irmão.
Oh, shoot.
So we had a lot of fun on that. So it was some fun going down. But these chicks, oh, they were scandalous as a motherfucker. But anyway, yeah. So that whole online thing is, you know, you don't you don't know what you're gonna get up in there, man. That shit is hell. It's hell.
It's like a cracker.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's like a Cracker Jack box, man.
Yep.
You're gonna be sorely mad, sorely highly disappointed. So I'm saying
you might. You know, I mean, you know, you had a lot of these girls. They look good. A lot of them look real good. But when you found out what they were doing for like a living, oh man,
nah, man.
You know, I'm talking straight garrulous hoes. They was up in there front.
The thing is, man,
they were fronting, man. Woo. Go ahead.
I think during COVID, man, your priorities got to get better. I don't think that you really need to be paying these, you know, these matchmakers and whatnot, man. Looking for who and for what, man? To be interacting with these people, nah, man. I can't go, dog. Like I'm like Ty City, I ain't going, dog. My perspective is, man, if they didn't start with you, they can't eat with you, man. That should be your model going forward. There's too many dudes who are willing to put it all on the line, you know, for the garrulous, man. I can't recommend that. I can't recommend it.
No. In fact, use a sucker if you're going out like that. But a lot of straight suckers out here, cold swaggering. So it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before YouTube comes up with their own little dating feature, man. And stuff.
May as well.
I mean, you may see these apps start popping up saying, you know, have you been tested for COVID? People gonna have to start presenting, work, evidence to submit, their results. Do I pass, the COVID check?
Yeah.
I think that's gonna eventually happen. People will go on dates with masks on their face. You got to social distance. What the hell is the point of that? It's kind of crazy, man. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. But
man.
The dating and game industrial complex, man. It's here, man. They're really ramping it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just here to stay. I don't think I'm saying it's here to stay. You got too many. A lot of people have met some of their significant others. On these dating sites. Some people have it. It has worked for some people, and that's why people are there, because it has. Some people have found success. And this has been going on for a while, so it kind of is what it is. I don't know what to say. Like I said, I don't mess with it like that. Like I said, I went on the Latin Euro joint. Is when I was going out to Brazil, I was going to do a little dating down there. When I went down there, and a lot of nice looking girls. Then when you met them, and all that, these chicks was wilder than a motherfucker. So, there was a lot of stuff going on. So the online thing it's a hit and miss thing. I mean, you can go in there and maybe get a hit, but there are a lot of misses going on. So.
Yep. I was surprised. I ended up in that box ago, and the first time that you meet somebody who you see on that site, and, wait a minute, what are you doing in here?
Hold on a second. You went on Latin Euro? You went on Latin Euro?
Oh, bro.
Yeah, I know Bob. See, I know Bob and them. See, I know them dudes. So, you know, so I know Bob. I know him, man. So, he showed me some real nice ladies, and I was like, "What's up?" Then when I went roll up in there, and I found some, like I said, these chicks was, some of them were straight up. Oh, I got a cough when I say that. Oh, and I was like, damn. So they were running hard. They were running hard up in that piece.
Yeah.
So hey, it was what it was. Then there was some legit ones as well. So we had to kind of go through the list a little bit, I'd say. You had to pick out about a good 7 or 8 to see what's going down. At least date around a little bit. But that the whole train was I would say was damn near running mag level on that bad boy. It was funny. It was very funny. I had to say I had some very entertaining stuff, but I did have 1 or 2 guys who had some kind of sucker lay chick go down where they brought a girl over and then they tried to hit him up for money and he wouldn't give him any dough and they wouldn't leave his apartment and it was just some crazy shit. So I saw some real crazy shit. Yeah. Because it was like they would try to tee up gringos. They were trying to tee the gringos up. And it was like, so that's the only place that I ever did the online stuff. And the gringos were getting teed up. And some of these chicks were coming in there real shaky, with some real shaky stuff. But I met a couple where they didn't hit me like that. And yeah, I had some fun. So, it was hit or miss. But what I was a little bit surprised about was the heavy number of hoes working the boards, the hoes working the boards. And then you had sucker lades who would come up in there who was soft like a Twinkie feeling, didn't know what they were fucking with, and these chicks would get their hooks into them. And that's what I was like, be careful, just be real careful.
I ain't going, dog. I ain't going, man. I can't go, man. They can't make me go either, man. I ain't going, man.
Well, I see a guy drop 1K, and I that's the last time I spoke to him.
Mm-hmm. No, you grabbed a lot of shit.
I don't know if you went. There's a place in Ipanema, just a little bit south of Ipanema, where you used to have these big parties. Had a pool up inside the house on the hills.
Yeah. What was the name of the spot? Because there were a couple out there like that. But what spot were you going to? You remember the name?
The one that's overlooking the beach by the hotel. See, I forgot the name of it. But
are you talking about over there near the if you go into the other side, going down by where the army by where the army barracks?
Yeah, past that.
Yeah. I know a few spots right there.
Man.
Yeah.
Fell off inside there and see this girl I was talking to online and I said, what are you doing here?
yeah. I mean, yeah, man.
Shoot.
No, but I've seen some who were like working, who were coming out of the Cuatro and coming out of this, and and yet they were on the boards like, oh, I'm this little innocent, and I'm looking for a husband and all that. Meanwhile, she just came off of about 5 different yakas. It was and then you had these straight up sucker lace, soft like a Twinkie feeling suckers falling for that. I was like, oh no, please don't. But yeah, you saw that. I mean, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. But that's part of the game. It's part of the game.
I can understand if like people are like introverts, right? They're introverts and they have a hard time speaking in public and stuff like that. But we're in lockdown, man. You ain't gonna be going out anytime soon. So my thing is, man, for Black males, which is my concern, is that I think you should be really putting your head in the books, getting your mind right, rather than
Mike, that's key right there. But people's gonna, they're gonna get a little COVID fever, and this is where a lot of guys are gonna get sucked in.
Mm-hmm.
These women, let me tell you what these women are gonna do. A lot of these guys are gonna get on these sites. You're gonna start talking to some of these chicks. Mm-hmm. And then they're gonna start disrobing on them phones. And these dudes are gonna they're gonna twist their minds visually. A lot of these cats are gonna get sucked in by looking at that phone, and the next thing you know, it's gonna be staying in their brain, and they're gonna try to get on over there. They're gonna be hooking cats like this while they up in here with this with this COVID psychosis. Dangerous game right now. Gotta look out for that because these chicks is gonna be doing that. Like I said, man, my ex-fiance, dude, man, come on, we ain't been together a little bit. She boned it up for an old boy. I'm like, it looked great, but still, as I said, we ain't seen each other in a minute, but she boned it up for the brother. So I'm just saying, this is the game that's going on, and I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm Obi-Wan. Shit, I'm Obi-Wan. Fuck that. Force is strong with me. But these weak dudes with no force, they finish. These chicks are getting ready to tee niggas up. I'm just calling that out right now. So
instead of me too, you may get COVID too. He gave it to me.
Be careful. Yeah. Be careful out there, boys. I know y'all getting thirsty out there. Be careful. Be careful.
Yeah, he coughed on me. He didn't have a mask on. COVID too.
Cats need to be on to you.
A lot of people are gonna get caught in that same trap after this thing is over.
Yeah, I just say a lot of dudes just, Mikey, hit it right in the head. Get your mind right. Start working on working on your business game. Get your programming skills down. Be on the computer. Be really, really focusing on getting your game right and seeing how you're gonna move your career and job and stuff forward. That's the most important thing, because these women are always going to be here. Don't get caught into that trap, because you get caught into that trap right now. And unfortunately, I know these weak-minded dudes whose only thing in their mind is caught up into your masculinity is based on these hoes, and there are too many highly suckle dudes walking around talking that shit. We don't want them. Those cats are gonna be getting caught up. We don't want you getting caught up like that. If you can help.
Yep. Right now is a good time to put all your business ideas, all the things that you were thinking of 2 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, when you were working hard as hell, putting in 16 hours a day and saying, man, I got to do better than this. And you put your ideas, now is the time to sit down and make a business plan on what you're going to do, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man.
You got that time. This is the time. You're staying at home. You might be staying at home, especially if your company allow you to work from home. Man, you got a lot of time to sit down and write out a business plan, and maybe even start putting some of it in place.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely, man. Definitely. Yeah, but let's close this out, man. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you've already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust Community. Those posted on the community tab. Knock in the description beneath the video for you all to follow along with and reference. Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.